So how did we sell a home in Hacienda Heights and buy another home in Hacienda Heights at the same time during COVID? Stay tuned. I think my most memorable story of a sell to buy had to be this one out in Hacienda Heights. And it was the most memorable because there was children involved. And anytime kids are involved, it's a tearjerker story. So I had met this buyer on the phone. I just got off of a Zillow call and he's like, Caroline, I have to have this home. And I said, all right, got it. And so the reason why he had to have this home is because one of his kids played tennis and they were really good at it. And there are very few communities in Hacienda Heights that have this tennis court. Beautiful home on top of the hill. And there were two offers at that time on this home after I called the agent. And we were pretty much neck and neck with one another. Our offer looked exactly the same as his offer. In fact, I think that he had the better offer because he had a larger proof of funds. And so my buyer looked over at me and he's like, once again, I'm depending on you. I have to have this house. So I told him, okay, why don't we write in there kind of a love letter on why you want this house. So we used the tool of the love letter to have an emotional attachment and a connection with the seller. And being the fact that he was Korean, he's like, starting his letter, he's like, this doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound from the heart. And so he had a better idea and he's like, come over. Next day I came over, I sat down, he brought all his 3 kids out. They were sitting in the room with construction paper, scissors, art supplies, and they were writing the seller a card on why they wanted the house so bad. And each kid had a dedicated room in the house. And they even went and got their report cards from school to show the seller that they were getting really good grades and why they deserved and why their daddy wanted this house. So once I saw that, I started tearing up. I ran over to the listing agent's house and I'm like, or her office, and I'm like, you have to see this. Brought over the offer, highest and best that we could. Then I brought the cards to her. She started crying and she's like, oh man, this is really hard. And she went over to the seller, showed him the cards, and within, an hour, they made the decision and we got accepted. I want to run you guys into this next clip because I want to show you that the home that he wanted to buy. Then we'll go into another clip of the home he had to sell. And then I'm going to go into what our biggest problem was on this deal. So you saw the home that he wanted to buy and then the home that he had to sell. Now, when he had called me, I knew how bad he wanted that home. And I even looked in all the areas just to see what was on the market in terms of like a tennis court home. I had no options. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking in my head, like, I gotta sell this home. And we had a bigger problem on our hands. And it's the fact that when we were purchasing the new home, I had to show the seller of that new home a good down payment and a proof of funds. But remember, we're selling the prior home to buy the new home. And so how am I going to come up with a proof of funds when the equity is in the home? And I can't tell this guy over here, the seller, that we had a home to sell, because they're never going to take us. They're not going to take a person who has a contingency. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking in my head, like, what do I need to do in this transaction? And this is where you need to pick an agent who has a really strong team, a big network of buyers, because we already had a guy in mind that wanted to buy his home just because of all the transactions that we had done out in Hacienda Heights. This was a great buyer. He had a $5 million proof of funds, and very easily he agreed to us that he trusted us and he was going to remove all contingencies. But we did an inspection report within 24 hours, gave it to him. There's very little problems with the house. And basically, because this was off market, we allowed our new buyer, who put this in all cash, to remove all contingencies and have a smooth closing. And in return, he allowed us and gave us his proof of funds. And so what we did with the new buy is we told him that we're actually selling the home, but all contingencies have been removed. And so I'm just putting in a standard offer, and I used my other guy's proof of funds to show the new seller that we had all cash. And that's basically how we closed this deal. So without the team approach, without this new buyer that we had in our database, who wanted to buy this home in Hacienda Heights, honestly, this transaction wouldn't have happened in just that day. The stars all aligned. So in the end, the seller was happy with his price. My new buyer, who was also a seller, was so happy with the sale of his home. All the kids were happy. And that was probably my most memorable transaction when it comes to a sell and buy. So in the end, our resolution, it was really our database of buyers. It was the fact that I didn't even have to write a contingent offer where I had to sell this home in order to purchase this home. It was because we had this great buyer who happened to be all cash, who happened to remove contingencies all within one day, who trusted us because he had worked with us. We had this database of buyers, the team approach. It was him who allowed this transaction to happen. And in the end, my buyer seller also locked in at under 3%. I mean, this was at the beginning of COVID, but all of the transitions happened so smoothly because we were able to time everything. And then we were able to get the house because of the love letter and just the creative involvement of the kids. So database of buyers, team approach, removing contingencies, and then the kids' love letter. That's what allowed us to just align all the stars and have a successful transaction. My name is Caroline Lee. I'm your sell to buy expert here in Southern California.